Hi there, I'm Musty Hobbit, and there's nothing that a hobbit loves more than another episode of Second Breakfast, so welcome back. The football season is upon us. The NFL kicks off tonight, so we are going to talk a little bit about football and the NFL. So for those of you who aren't into sports, please do stick around. I promise there's more for you specifically. But of course, as always, let's talk about what I've been up to this past week, the things I've been doing, the games I've been playing. This past weekend in particular, was Labor Day weekend, so we had extra day to kind of relax and just sort of do some things, just sort of chill out, which has been really nice. It was nice to have a nice extended weekend where there wasn't a whole lot planned, which was good. I actually got to start a couple of new games, and then also got to participate in the Splatfest. So for Splatoon 2, this weekend was the competition between superpowers, flight versus invisibility. And I was on Team Flight with many of the other members of the Cartridge Club, and I got a nice chunk of time to play a lot of Splatoon, which was really quite nice. And Flight won. And we're pretty happy about that. I think we had sort of anticipated that Flight may be the one that is the least popular, more because there's people who have this aversion to Pearl between the two Octolings that sort of officiate the whole thing. And so we anticipated that we might lose that one, but the people who played for Flight were far superior, winning a majority of both the team battles and then the individual, where you basically single queue up for that. So I was pretty happy that we got the win. I'm looking forward to the next Splatfest. I have no idea what it is going to be, but it should be a whole lot of fun. I started the next game on my PS3 backlog, and this one is actually going to be a Cartridge Club Game of the Month next year, in March specifically, and that is The Last of Us. This game has been pointed out to me as one of the best games on the system, and in just the first hour and a half or so, I'm hooked. There is some stuff, if you have not played it, I am not going to go into any spoilers, but that first stretch of this game is a lot to take in, and it had me asking myself a lot of questions that I will refrain from questioning and answering, because I'm sure that they will be something that they'll want to talk about during the podcast itself 6 months from now. But I'm looking forward to working through that one. It is definitely one that it was high on my list, so I'm glad that I've gotten started. But oh man. To those of you who played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Keeping in the theme of Cartridge Club Games of the Month, this month, September, we are playing not one but two Mega Man games. One of them being Mega Man 2 on the NES, and the other being Mega Man ZX, which is on the Nintendo DS. I took advantage of a really good trade-in deal at GameStop, of all places, and actually nabbed that copy. Actually got a copy for a future portable Game of the Month as well. So I'm looking forward to playing through both of those. This will be the first month that I'm going to attempt to play through both the CC main and the CC portable Game of the Month. So I'm pretty excited there. I have not ever officially beaten Mega Man 2, so I'm hoping that I knock that out relatively soon, maybe even later tonight. We shall see. So recently, Season 6 of competitive Overwatch just kicked off, and one of the nights this weekend I happened to be on. I saw that one of my old Halo 3 buddies was on, and he invited me into the party, and I got to do some of my placement matches. I'm not through all 10 yet, but it was great to get to play with him and with a group of guys that I'm not really familiar with, but they go by Team Overbite, and yeah, it was great. I got to play my McCree, which I haven't really played a whole lot of McCree in a while, and I felt like I got back into a rhythm with him. I don't know if there's been some of the changes that have happened recently with tinkering with the characters that Blizzard has done, but it was nice to play a little more competitive Overwatch. Usually when I'm playing with the club guys, we usually are playing a little more chill and not focusing so much on the competitive aspect. Aside from playing games, I actually took the time to watch a couple movies this weekend, and both of these came on recommendation from some of the people from the weekly Cartridge Club hangout. We had been discussing the Studio Ghibli movies. These are effectively, to simplify it, Japanese Disney. And so my library happened to have a couple of them, so I managed to watch those. One of them, the first being Ponyo, which is based on the Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid original story, which then Disney then did their version of the Little Mermaid. And I really enjoyed Ponyo. It is extremely colorful. The characters were very likable, and I had a blast watching that with my son. Just seeing him kind of grin and just really enjoy watching it, even though it's, the story may not hold up great. It certainly does what it needs to do. I really liked it. I liked Ponyo quite a bit. And the other movie that I actually watched on my own, was Castle in the Sky, which coincidentally was playing in theaters not too far from here last week. But I happened to rent it, and so I managed to get it from the library, so I watched it at home on my own. Now this movie, some people tout, in particular, one of the guys at Pixar, one of the head guys at Pixar, had a little excerpt at the beginning of the movie to kind of talk about how much of an impact this movie had on him. And this movie is from the mid-'80s. And I feel like him talking it up actually kind of set me up to have high expectations, and I unfortunately feel like I didn't get my expectations met. It was a good story. It was interesting. Some of the characters I liked, and some of them I didn't. There was kind of this weird comedic element going on. All in all, though, between the two, if I just compare Ponyo versus Castle in the Sky, I think I prefer Ponyo, even though it's far simpler. It aligns a lot more with the Disney style of cartoon than Castle in the Sky did, in my opinion. All in all, see both. I think they are both quite good, and I'm looking forward to watching a few more of these Ghibli movies, if I'm saying that right. So the topic for today is going to be the NFL, and to kind of set you up for this, I kind of want to give a little bit of my background. I have been a lifelong Chicago Bears fan from a very young age. I suppose winning a championship when you are, seeing that when you are only 4 years old will sometimes have an effect on you. And as Bears fans know, you just can't let that go. Really, we can't. We continue to live for Super Bowl 20, and it is what it is. The Bears have been good and bad, and probably more bad than good. And so, to be honest, my interest in football, I've always been of the mindset of I fixate on the team that I am rooting for. I may have a team in the other conference that I like, and in the past I've liked the Broncos, sort of that late '90s Broncos teams. I really liked those guys, but it's always been the Bears. It's always been my main team. Now, over the past couple of years, over the past maybe 10 years, there's been a bunch of upheaval in the coaching staff and the general manager and it's been entirely overhauled. They've changed from their traditional defense and things like that, and it doesn't feel like the team that I had grown up to love. They're trying to play a new style of ball, and I had always enjoyed the tenacious defense that they were playing, and so it's kind of difficult. Will I ever not be a Bears fan? I don't think so. I'm also not like I said, I'm not the type to abandon my roots when it comes to a sporting team. Lifelong Cubs fan. I've always been a Blackhawks fan. Maybe being from the Chicago suburbs has kind of instilled that in me, but I don't think I would ever just walk or say, okay, I'm going to be a fan of so-and-so now. That's not to say that people who aren't doing it right. Everyone kind of has their own way that they approach sports, if they approach sports at all. But the NFL's been doing some interesting things, and not all of them are great. toward their approach to handling player safety. There's a great example is just something I learned about today. They are postponing the Miami Dolphins and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game on Sunday because of Hurricane Irma, which is bearing down to hit Florida. And those of you who are in Florida, if any of you are watching, thoughts go out to you. I hope you stay safe. So they've decided, coincidentally, both of those teams have the bye week. On week 11 would have been their bye week. And so they've decided, okay, we're just going to take this week 1 game and we're going to push it to week 11. Effectively meaning that these two teams will not get a bye this year. They will play 16 straight weeks of football. They will not have a break, which is something that they build into every team's schedule for a chance to recover, for a chance to kind of recoup from the constant damaging injuries that can happen in this game. And I really have to question the NFL's drive there. I think it's strange that you could have very easily moved that game to a neutral field. You could have moved them to Atlanta this weekend because Atlanta's playing in Chicago. There were a lot of options here. I'm surprised that they went with the option of postponing the game. And I don't know if it's that they're afraid that they'll lose. I think what I was reading a lot of was that the league and the home team are going to lose a lot of money by not having that game in Miami. And so for that reason, we're just going to postpone it. And I feel that that's a poor decision because you are now turning around and putting, in the sake of trying to keep people safe, you are now putting player safety at risk because now these guys don't get a break and you get 16 straight weeks. So we'll see how that all pans out. It's kind of strange to start the year off with a bye week. Sometimes in the past when there have been these kind of breaks or these kind of weather events, they found another way to make it happen. They've pushed the game up or they've delayed the game a day or two. They've found ways to get around it, and this one seems odd to me. And I think you see now this game in general. My interest on the NFL is dipping, and I think part of it is that I just see these physical specimens who are just getting so fast and so strong compared to what I was seeing in the 80s and 90s, and it's possible that the collisions that we were seeing then were just as hard as they are now, but we're seeing immediate effects now, whereas then it was people were shaking it off. They were, rub some dirt in it, get back in there. Now the awareness on concussions, and I should know I've had more than one of them in my brief football career. It's scary, and to be honest, football is something that I'm likely not going to have my son play because I think a lot of the science that's behind it, I think a lot of the data is really starting to point to the fact that this style of game, a collision sport, not a contact sport, is just dangerous. And especially if you play it early. I could see them dialing back high school football. I could see them doing something. They really can't, but they could do something about college football. And don't get me wrong, both of those things are great things, but to see the lasting impacts is scary, and it's something that, as a father of a son, I don't know that I would want to subject him to that. There's plenty of ways to enjoy football, and some of the things that I've seen lately. Years ago, I used to have the Red Zone channel. So the Red Zone channel was basically from the first kickoff until the last game ends. It is a constant switcher. It's one channel, but it keeps switching you to the best action. You always see every touchdown. You always see all the points being scored, every turnover and things like that. And it's really compelling. It was a great way to spend 7 hours every Sunday when you had no other commitments, and it was a blast. You'd throw on, I would put together pot of chili in the morning. We'd just sort of watch football all day, and it was great. They'd even do this thing when there's multiple games going on that have big impact moments happening, where they would either do split screen, or they would even do three different screens, or they would do what they call the quad box, where they'd have 4 screens going all at once. And you would see some crazy things happening, especially toward the end of games. And it was a blast. I think a big reason why that kind of took off is fantasy football, and that's something that I am taking a big role in this year. I'm actually participating in 5 leagues, and just to stop you now, it's not a huge commitment. Fantasy football itself, the way that I look at it is, you do the research once, the research really applies to all of your teams. So whether I had 3 or 5, I feel the amount of time commitment is not different. What it does is it does give me more opportunity if I manage my team well. If I happen to pick the right guys when they have big weeks, I could win some money, and that's something that I am interested in. Obviously, that can go toward things for the game room, that can go toward upgrading equipment and things like that. And so fantasy football, ever since I found that, which was probably about 8 or 9 years ago, has been something that I've done at least one team for every year. And it is a lot of fun. It gives you rooting interest when your team stinks. And so that's kind of a nice thing there. I was also looking recently, Madden just came out this week, and for the first time, specifically for the Madden franchise, they are injecting a story campaign into their football game, which is just, it's kind of interesting. A lot of these other games, 2K has done this with their NBA series, where you've kind of been a player and you get drafted and you end up kind of developing as a player. So I'm interested to see. I don't know how soon I would play it, but at some point, playing through this campaign and seeing what that's like. But it's interesting to see the sport right now. I feel like they're kind of teetering on the edge a little bit with some of this player safety stuff, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple years. But all in all, I'll enjoy it. I will enjoy the fantasy aspect. That certainly is a lot of fun, even if you don't watch the games. All you need to do is set your team and walk away. There were multiple weeks last year, because I was just not interested in watching the Bears last year, that I just set the team and I went about my Sunday just like any other Sunday. Watching the game doesn't change how your fantasy team is gonna play. So I think I'm gonna leave you there. Again, I'm looking forward to the football season because it's an unknown, but I at the same time I'm kind of reserved because I have a feeling that my team is not going to be any good this year. I know that many of you probably enjoy football, so tell me what's your game day like? What do you do? Do you have Red Zone, and do you spend that entire day just watching football, or do you have another way that you approach the game? Please let me know in the comments. And as always, please like the video if you did, and subscribe if you are not already. Thank you for coming by. I have been Musty. Take care of yourself. Be good to each other. Bye.